and do our bit.
All right. Hello, everyone. We are here again every Monday with Dr. Craig Wright, the inventor of Bitcoin. And what are we going to learn today, Doctor?
We're going to go over a few distinctions between things and get people to understand a little bit more. Also, how evidence remains for a long time. People have probably seen that Mr. Pony Fluffer there's been arrested.
Okay. Oh, really?
The whole point here is...
Is it like when did this
Monero
happen?
guy.
Oh, he's arrested? Oh, didn't know that.
Only this week. Yep, only today. So basically, it comes down to if you do things that are not legal, you pay for the consequences. And the irony, everyone sits there going, "It's government." Well, it's not government. It's society. We set rules. If you want to be part of them, you have to abide. That's simple. So on that vein, we're going to have a little bit of a deep dive into exploring why proof of work, why I rejected systems such as proof of stake, and why I've been hinting it doesn't have anything to do with scale. So let's have a look at each of these systems first of all. So proof of work, what we're doing is we have a small number of entities that build blocks, and I mean, the reason for this is that they can come and go at will. It's really a system where anyone can compete, and you know what's there. Proof of work de-anonymizes. I've said that many times before. So it means you can't be sitting there hiding if you want to be anyone who's a significant player. You can't run behind Tor or anonymous VPNs or anything like this. Once you get to scale, then none of that will work. So effectively, the system I sort of envisioned in 2008 was always this way. I always stated it ends in data centers, it ends scaling into big operations. Now, people keep having this idea that it democratizes everything by giving everyone one vote per person. Now, in the white paper, when I mentioned one vote per person, I was not saying that's how Bitcoin should be. Exactly the opposite. I made the statement that if we tried to do it one vote per person, we end up with a system that gets sibbled.
Yeah, that's
because
why
we don't have identity, dude. There's no global identity system. And even then, think about it for a moment. What would identity systems lead to? Even if we had a perfect identity system and everyone had one vote, etc.
I mean, that's the same thing with
No idea.
Current demagoguery. That's one thing.
Well, what will happen is you will end up with a small number of nodes because people don't want to run a node. They can't. The consensus methodology in Bitcoin only allows a very small number of nodes to actually exist. It could have been larger. I played around with different ideas in my head to try and see how it would work. But it's not. So even then, there's always a small number, Pareto distribution, of nodes that have the majority of sort of control of the network. It's meant to be that way. And these nodes, as I've said before, can come and go. If you have 10 nodes and one of them drops out, then the profitability of the network increases. If it's a major node and it's 20% of the network, then the profitability increases significantly. So it's a self-healing, robust system because of economic measures. That's really what it's about. So if we now go back to the consideration of what if every person on Earth got to vote? Well, we can't individually do that. So we would need a representative system. And there's not going to be 8 billion different voting sort of things going different ways. So all that ends up happening, like we see in democracy, is we get one big party, one smaller party, and a few small ones that have who cares.
Mm-hmm.
The reality is you end up with a system that still forms into large voting blocks. And you can argue what happens, but if we're making it anonymous, then large voting blocks are subject to sibling and being bought.
Mm-hmm.
And we end up with proof of stake. So if we now consider what proof of stake is, now the argument is you're not getting a dividend, so it's not like a share.
Okay, I think we
Where are you from?
originally at Facebook, so I think we talked about this before. If a
Yep,
stock doesn't give you a
we
dividend,
did.
it doesn't mean
So again,
it's
so
not
yep, it's still a
securities.
share. It's a bearer share. Bearer shares are illegal in the United States. Sitting there going, oh, but people can choose. Well, not really. As I've said before, you have some people who have small amounts of income left over, and then you have those who are wealthy can invest more, like cash now. Those with lots of money can have money sitting in the bank in case things are ever a problem. Those with the little amount live day to day, and the same scenario will occur. So all that means is that the large players vote and no small player ever votes. It's not like a long tail effect. In proof of stake, there is no way to have long tail. What you end up with is a very small number of individuals acting as a voting block. Now, I want you to consider what happens if one of those gets hacked.
You mean the party? Is not some nodes?
Let's say that Vitalik, in his infinite security wisdom, has his 30% stake, and he gets hacked, um, and the Ethereum proof of stake system now has to operate without his node.
Just
What happens to the network?
with 30% of the stakeholder just gets offline and just everything keep going.
Hmm. Yeah. So um, there's no need for difficulty adjustment. If you think about it for a moment, why would you need a difficulty adjustment in proof of stake?
No, there's no difficulty.
You're not changing the number of voting entities.
No.
Hmm. So you have the same number of entities. No one comes and goes. So what happens if Vitalik drops off the network?
Nothing.
Just in his proof of stake system.
Just
nothing. The network keeps going, and under some of the provisions of Casper, etc., he would be able to hand his control to one of the other nodes for a fee and keep earning. So the network could slow down, be less robust, and he could just take his time, go, well, I'll be back in 3 months from my little sabbatical and holiday. It'll be right.
Okay.
And we end up with normal everyday gas problems as we see in Ethereum. So alternatively, what happens if someone comes up with a great new form of node that is even quicker? New hardware, new software, something that makes 8 times the processing power for even less cost.
There's nothing. You cannot just get into the game by just better technology or processing, because you need to have hot coins to be for it to bring you profit.
So effectively, what you end up with is what we see with things like OPEC now. We have cartels. And if you have a number of lots of balanced smaller cartel members, There can be some level of dynamism as individuals sort of break ranks. But what we have in something like Ethereum, where we have large players, like 30%, the thing to remember is if you think that people are going to be using this network in the future, I don't actually think that way, but let's assume that some magical sort of unicorn actually makes Ethereum slightly workable, like magic pony farts or something.
Okay.
Now,
That's
we have this working version of Ethereum,
okay.
but it could be even better. Do we care? I mean, if you're the person earning money, do you suddenly care? Now, now there's 50% of the network now is taken for the used coins. Let's just say they're being used actively because there's a working version of Ethereum somehow in this alternate universe where up is down and whatever else. 50% of those coins are used. They can't be staked.
Okay.
Do you see how you can't stake these? Because if you have to lock them up for 3 months, you're not using them for games. You're not using them for NFTs. You're not using them for property markers, for recording information, are you?
No.
How can you do both? So
You
what
cannot.
you now have is the people who need to use the system and those who want to be parasitical, like rentiers, who want to sit there and earn money. And let's say that we have 50% and 50%. It would actually be slightly larger on the large players because of individuals like the pre-mine people. But now 50% of the network set the proof of stake control. Okay, that's understandable, right?
Yeah.
50% used, 50% staked.
Mm-hmm.
How much does Vitalik hold?
Percentage wise, I don't know, 10%?
Yes. I, I mean, I believe with the foundation and things, they have something
30?
30 something percent.
Okay.
Now, if they have 30% of the whole network and only 50% can be staked, how much of the network do they have?
If they stake half the 15%?
No, if they stake all their 30%
Oh, awesome.
because they want to earn money,
Okay.
how much of the network do they have?
60%? If you're in terms of
Yes,
the
and
other
what does
owned revenue.
60% mean in this industry?
Okay.
So
Centralized
now they
revenues.
talk about, yeah, so they talk about wanting to share the network, allow others to be part of it, correct? But if you have 60% control of a blockchain-based system and you have the rights to change the code, which Bitcoin doesn't, and update the protocol at will, which Bitcoin doesn't, what do you have?
Pretty much, you might not just use a MySQL database. It's not much different. It got a monopoly.
It is a completely, utterly controlled system. Now, the secret that they have is they believe that they can run this as bearer shares. Now, if I issue 1 million company shares and I own 30% of them, but all they are is numbered entries, like 0, 1, 2, 3, etc. But they're randomized. Now, I can sit there and say, oh, it's lots of nodes because it was won by stake number 0 this time, and next time it'll be stake number 7. But see, it's all me anyway. So it's not me. Look, don't look behind the curtain because
Okay.
I don't really have 60% control of the network. It's really these 300,000 individuals that I all control.
And that's pretty much
Are
a
you starting
definition
to
of
see
that.
some of the issue with these alternatives? Now, they sit there and they say, Bitcoin sucks, proof of work. And they say, we will make it better with proof of stake. Do you
Yeah,
see
that
what the issue
logic.
here is?
I don't think it's first of all it's not better. Second of all, I think it's overselling because they always claim is that's part I never fully understand. The claim is more scalable, but I think
Well,
if I remind, you talk about
we'll get to that one in a minute.
uh-huh.
We'll get to the scalable in a minute. But the key here is that it's a central database, like you said. When they have that 30%, they really have controlling interest. So if you have controlling interest, who sets the fees?
You can set it if you want. Pretty much, they also have like
Mm-hmm.
block gas limit. It's similar to like a block size, so they can just control it.
Yep. So who sets the fees on that one? The gas fees.
But that one,
They
there's
do. Who sets any changes? I mean, you can sit there going, oh, we need the community to support our change. And like BTC, you can sort of make up a whole lot of BS about, oh, we've got consensus. How do you get consensus? Magic stuff happened on Reddit. What happened on Reddit? Well, Greg ran up 10,000 bots and they all said exactly the same thing.
Yeah,
So
consensus.
that's consensus. So, yeah, no, Greg agrees and then everyone's in consensus. How do we know it works? Greg agrees. See how this works? Yeah. Now, go back to proof of stake. What we have, in effect, is one group. No new entrants can come into it. You can make cartels. You can make, like I said years ago, it's a system that creates oligarchy. I mean, Vitalik has obviously has sort of Russian ideas, and Russians are very good at creating oligarchs. I mean, they've got a history of it.
Okay.
Don't blame them; it's part of their culture. But hey, that's not what Bitcoin's about. So the difference with Bitcoin, why it's decentralized, is the exact opposite of what people say we can change the code, etc. It is decentralized because even I can't change the code. I can't change the protocol. I mean, I can have different code implementations on the same protocol, but if the creator of a system isn't allowed to even change it, then you can't say I'm controlling it. Whereas in Ethereum, what is happening is the people in charge do whatever the hell they want. I might be bound under things like court orders and all sorts of other fun things. But that is completely different to an arbitrary group who decide. If nobody decides, then that's what permissionless is. You can build, like you've been exploring what you can do in script, and you've started seeing just how much you can do in script.
Pretty
What
much
did you
everything.
release just this week? So what were you talking about earlier this week?
Like a few days ago, we were talking about the Merkleized abstract syntax tree masked. They're trying to put part of the taproot upgrade. Yeah, but
we don't need that.
Yeah, we don't need to change the protocol. They've been spending 4 years for this, so I kind of push it just not be very practical for some people to use it today, but it's just a good exercise to just show. You don't need tinkering all the original protocol. Just figure out a way to do it with the existing system, of course.
Exactly. And I tried to warn people a few years ago because the money laundering directives, MLD 4, 5, etc., actually came out many, many years ago. The MLD 5 provisions only kicked off this year, but there are provisions that will follow that next year and the year after. And the United States are implementing a number of other stablecoin regulations, although if it went to court and people explained that they're just euro bonds, they would actually be able to charge people right now, today, because stablecoin legislation came through in 1999. Because cryptocurrencies existed in 1999. But the problem is there's so much legislation now that no one can find the damn stuff. So technically all this stuff's right there. Now, one of the problems is, first of all, as soon as people realize that it's a bearer instrument, a bearer bond, and it is cleared up and judges understand that, which will happen very shortly, then what does that mean? What do you think it means if you can no longer legally have it as a bearer instrument?
You got taken down?
Well, if you're going to run a node, or you're going to be involved in anything that way, then it will be necessary for you to have KYC, AML.
Yeah. Okay. Just like a lightning node, like if you're like a money transmitter.
Yep. So if you're going to try and do this, we're really secret because we've got 30% of the network broke into 1 million addresses, Ethereum thing. That's all they're really doing. They're going to keep their 30%, but they're going to split it into lots of little addresses. Guess what? It's all going to be you. Everyone's going to know it is you controlling 60% of the network. Whoop-de-doo-dah. I mean, you're not so secret. And now, Calvin and I know this one well, because old George Bush passed a piece of gambling legislation in 2005. I was working with a number of casinos at the time. I've mentioned this before, including Lassiter's. Lassiter's are an Australian casino. Lassiter's had difficulty with banking. Some of the others had difficulty with banking. Australia, I mean, this was licensed legal operators. Many of the poker people dropped out. The reason being is the American government controls correspondent banking. Correspondent banking it basically means if you block that, you cut that bank off from any international transfer. So imagine an Australian bank can only act as a partner bank to another bank. They can't send any international transfers for any business needs, any settlements. Basically, they become unimportant. No bank wants to go through that. And the Americans can do it like that. So what happens is that goes through, internet gambling goes down the tube, apart from illegal stuff. That's part of the whole Bitcoin bit. If we cash transactions the way that I was looking at internet payments, it would have solved all the problems for Lassiter's and other things. Unfortunately, it didn't work out that quickly. Now, the other part of this that no one's thinking about is what is the value of Ethereum, BTC, if you can't use it for exchanges?
Like virtually zero, close to zero, because most of them is doing speculations at the moment.
So even worse than that, what happens to miners when they can't exchange?
Oh, then they don't have revenue coming. You just keep burning electricity, and you got bills to pay. You may even got employees to pay, and they cannot even liquidate their costs. No.
Exactly. So the first thing they do is get out of it. again, everything falls over. Now, this is less of an issue for Ethereum with proof of stake when they move there, because um, if all the miners drop out, who cares? Ethereum don't care. The network slows down, grinds to a halt, but people still earn money. They can't get it out, and eventually it will collapse, but it is a longer collapse than BTC. In BTC world, miners drop out, the difficulty adjustment period goes down the tube, more miners drop out, and it dies. And by dies, I mean it dies a really bad, hard death. Now, the thing here is, if you think about it for a moment, the way that the ASICs have increased difficulty, what happens to home users? How many machines do you think there are in some of these Chinese mines?
I think that's like minutes. It can be minutes.
So
home user,
you
no,
can't
never
replace
never
it
catch
with
up.
users.
No, that's like it running like a SHA-256 on your PC. It's like I think last time I checked, it's like 1 million times or even more slower than like any like a Bitmain
Well,
X50
an interesting little side fact
miners.
So an interesting little side fact people don't realize. You should check the difficulty, and there are mining operations now have enough hash power so that they could take over the network at will if there's no legal sort of problems with the current drops. I mean, there is enough that multiple sort of parties can take it over and just decide to double spend everyone in all these things. They could have 100% control of the network. Fortunately, you can find them. De-anonymizers, you can then take action against them. Because of the way proof of work works.
Yeah.
Yes.
I'm always curious about this. So is proof of work the only purpose is to de-anonymization, or is there some other, I don't know, technical or other legal purpose?
No, it is purely a provable way of finding investment in the network.
Okay, it's not about making it secure by like you have to like putting computing resources on top of it. Okay.
Well, do you realize the whole first bit up to 2016 can be rebuilt using existing hash power in under 10 minutes?
Yeah, like a Moore's law.
So people go, oh, it's so long. Yeah, that's the whole point. Every year it doubles, but the other part does. So it's super exponential the other way. And you can basically collapse a lot of the network into a small chunk of current hardware.
Okay.
So people don't seem to understand that the whole from day one to 2016 can be done in 10 minutes right now.
Okay.
All those years. So everyone's going, it'll take this many years to... No, it won't. Because when you see that graph like that, what you need to remember is now the hash power is going that up here, and all that was nothing until there. So you have this much area against that. So you just blow it away. If people actually did the mathematics behind it, they'd realize that they could do this. So you can argue that proof of stake doesn't have that problem because the number of staking units don't change. If you have 30 units out of 100, you have 30 units of 100. Unless someone decides to do a share split or something like this, you always have 30 units out of 100. 100 years from now, you have 30 units out of 100, which is great if you're the incumbent.
Yeah.
I mean, from a Silicon Valley point of view,
Mm-hmm.
if you're Facebook or Twitter, what would you want to create? Would you want to create a system that opens up like self-obsolescence and allows replacement so that MySpace can just be seamlessly replaced by Facebook? Or would you like
Mm-hmm.
Facebook to be the incumbent forever? Which one do you think the Silicon Valley guys would say?
Of course, I would be prefer the latter. I just want to be like almost the proof of stake. I already earned enough, so I just stake there. I do nothing,
Mm-hmm.
and just keep earning.
Proof of
Yeah.
oligarchy. Yeah, that's what
Mm-hmm.
we should call it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, another.
So, um, hmm. So this is the whole point of why it's there. So people come up with all these silly ideas. Why can't we use uh, proof of work to solve other problems? What do you think happens if we start using it for other problems?
Mm, it's then it's not it will not work as good as anonymization tool because people are hinting at this, saying
Well,
use in Siberia or Iceland you can heat homes, whatever you can do. So it's not wasted, whatever that means. So you mean you cannot
well,
be?
then there is an economic trade-off against other cost of the electricity. So the investment then comes under a three-body problem type issue. And if we're making money even from saving on electricity for heating, that changes the economic balance and it skews it to different areas and it puts away the earning from growing the network into alternative uses. Now, the problem with such a thing is it's unpredictable. I've said before, Bitcoin is based on what is known as a multi-leader, multi-follower Stackelberg game.
Mm-hmm.
It's a more complex version of game theoretic tool, a Stackelberg game. In a Stackelberg game, the dominant player follows the action of some of the followers, and vice versa. Trying to simplify it as much as I can without dumbing it down too much, but the leader can't go off on their own and do whatever they want. Now, if
Mm-hmm.
you're a node, a miner, and you've got 30% of the network, you have to think what the other 70% will do.
Mm-hmm.
You have to consider these guys could be there, someone could come into competition, someone might ramp up extra hash power. So every single block is a game theoretic competition where you're trying to build 100 blocks on top of your block without it being lost. As such, um, you have to balance the actions of other individuals. You have to make sure if you're that 30%, that 70% doesn't do something that makes you lose money.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you try and force it into hidden blocks, orphaning, etc., then you have the majority of the network can punish you
Mm-hmm.
at all times. So you always need to consider potential punishments and sort of negative action for not being a team player. I mean, the irony of all this is the individual who is completely terrible at doing this in real life, um, the Aspie amongst us, is the one who's designing this.
Mm-hmm.
The one who thinks like a Vulcan half the time, um, um, not the average person who gets along with other people. So,
Okay.
um, funny enough, a psychologist I have dealt with a few times, and I would consider uh, someone I enjoy interacting with. Um, he sort of recently pointed out that as an ASPE, I can model thought patterns of other people this way, but even when I can't understand them, which I find quite interesting, but accurate enough. Now, going back to what we're trying to do with all this, what is the goal of Bitcoin?
Go. At least one has a peer-to-peer electronic cash system.
So we want a system that will stay low price, low fee, because it's not cash once you get it into a $1 million sort of people exchanging drug money online coin, or a gambling coin, or any of these other things. The average person on earth doesn't spend $1 million buying bloody Lamborghinis with their cash. What they do is they buy groceries and milk, and they buy things on the web. These, I don't even know what this, whatever the stupid Farmville or Angry Birds type game is. I'm so out of touch with these actual games. It's been a few years. What can I say? I don't have any damn time to muck around on whatever the replacement for Angry Birds or Flappy Birds or whatever the hell is anymore.
Okay, it's definitely not Quaker. So
you buy those sort of things. So that's what cash is for. That is why it works. So that's one of the fundamental things we need to get, apart from everything else we can do. I want to have it used for many other reasons, but cash is the first, foremost, and penultimate goal of Bitcoin. Cash means low value, low cost. How much do you pay when you go out there and get a $10 note?
Zero.
Well, it's not actually zero, by the way.
It's not. Right. Well, what do you mean? If I pay somebody, just hand some physical bill?
When you get it out of a automatic teller machine,
that's a
is
fee,
that free?
you mean? Depends.
Yeah. So
if it's local,
when you go to a bank, they have fees associated. If it's completely a cash economy thing, then there are costs of storage and other such things, but that's very low in comparison. But if you pay 20 cents and you get out 2,000 US dollars, and you're not going to get much more than that out of an auto teller machine, then that's still 1 cent. So you've now paid 1 cent per dollar type transaction rate. So that's what we need to compete with. At that rate, people go, it's zero. Like you've just said, it's zero. Well, it's not actually zero, but it's close enough that who cares? It's close enough that we no longer worry about the rounding on it, and we just act. So that's what Bitcoin needs to be. So the system works with proof of stake if you don't care whether you have large fees, incumbent players, no advancement, but no cash.
Yeah, I think
if you care about not being, if you want a system that is not controlled by one entity, which any proof of stake system will always end up as an oligarchical or cartel-based system in charge. There will be a few large players who dictate what happens. Proof of work, you don't. So proof of work incentivizes people to invest back into the network, not to take rent, but to eventually, as the system grows, which we haven't seen because people are pushing to this fixed cap. The BTC fixed cap idea pushes down, it increases the short-term profit of miners, and only short-term, decreases what the system does, and takes away from the sort of increases the level of profitability per coin. That's why people think it's better now. The end is very low profits. We have a only profitable if you find a new innovation. If someone finds new innovations and they can process more transactions in a block faster, they get more.
Mm-hmm.
If they get more, they earn more. So over time, someone can then reduce the fees, earn more again, etc. So some people will argue this is a race to the bottom, and it is for the miners. I mean, miners can say, I'm terrible, I'm not their friend, even Tal, but the concept here is to get them to realize that it is about making high volume with little profit.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at many industries out there, the profitability is in the order of 0.5%.
Yeah, I
Where
think you
you have
always
large global competitive
mhm.
sources.
Yeah, you always cited the
Yeah.
example of
Keep going.
Coca-Cola, yeah, or
Hmm.
Pepsi. Yeah.
Yeah. Coke, Pepsi, they're both sugar water. They both actually know each other's formula. If they wanted to, they could copy it. They're not interested. What it's all about is marketing people to drink their brand of sugar water.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't make huge volume, it's like huge profits. You are not going to get $5 profit per can of Coke.
No, no. It's like a
Not going to happen.
BTC. Yeah, you can.
Whereas if you, yeah, you look at the alternative, and something like Moe used to get more than $5 for every single bottle of wine they sold.
Mm.
And who are they owned by? Actually, one of these. Moe, Chandon, yeah, Louis Vuitton now.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Okay.
and they have changed as well. So in the past, Moe, Chandon, Dom Perignon, etc., were very closed. So back in say about 1999, I think it was, I tried to get some old vintage Dom Perignon and got told where to go by all the French people who controlled it all.
Mm-hmm.
Now that they're owned by Louis Vuitton commercially, and they're going into making profit, um, you can buy fairly much every year that you want that's available. They'll change in price, but 20 years ago, the producers would go screw yourself. We're not going to sell no matter what you offer us.
Hmm. Okay.
Now, they will put a price on it, and the market will set a rate, and they will control it. And arguably, per bottle, they're getting less, but
Mm-hmm.
they're making more money.
By selling
The
more,
size of their
imagine.
vineyards have increased. Yeah, I mean, I think they've got nearly 3,000 acres of vineyards now,
Mm-hmm.
so quite large. So you can say that they're less exclusive because more people can drink it. But simultaneously, they're still rather exclusive and expensive. They're cheaper than they were 10 years ago, but they're not cheap. The same thing as we scale the Bitcoin network, the fees can get lower. That's the nature of what proof of work's about. It's about being able to competitively push down all these prices and add efficiencies to the system.
Mm-hmm. So how would like a proof of stake system in this regard? Is it never going to lower cost, or there's no incentive?
So
Uh,
if you're talking about there's no incentive at all, it's actually the opposite, to do nothing. So now I want you to think about incentives for a moment, and let's take it down to there are two of us controlling Ethereum in the future, you and I, and you want to scale because you want to do stuff on it. Okay, you want to release new versions of code, you want to invest in the network, and I'm, I couldn't care. So you invest millions of dollars and you come up with a solution that allows it to scale. And now, to implement that, you have to give it to me. If you don't give it to me, I will go, I don't care, I'm not implementing it. There's no incentive for me to adopt it. So what happens is you give me all the updates that make things better for me and cheaper. You bear the cost. And I go, screw you. If you want to do this because you want to build these other things, then give it to me.
Okay.
Welcome to socialism.
Sounds great. Because I don't know, there's feels like I'm helping my competitors.
Where's the incentive? Yeah. So by not investing in the network, I make more profit than you.
Just do some free riding. Is that how it's going to play out?
Yeah, I become a free rider. Exactly.
That's more even.
I mean, that's what people don't.
That's a good strategy in proof of stake. That's what I'm saying.
So, so that's really the heart of why in Bitcoin.
So why do so many people? I think that's we talked about earlier. Why do they think this can be the proof of stake is more scalable somehow? I never fully understand what the argument is. It's just because they think
the argument is
no funding announced, you don't burn electricity, so you can. I don't know. I don't know what's the rationale.
Well, that's what they argue, because people look at BTC and no block size, but there's no incentive to build larger blocks with Ethereum either. If you're moving to proof of stake, then there's no incentive to increase the block size. You only do it when you have to. It's like every other socialist organization. You do it so that people won't revolt. Now, but the argument is we can scale. Well, in a way, but the same way I can scale an Oracle database. I can double the processing power anytime I want. And over time, I don't need to spend more money on bandwidth. It will just get bigger. So if I wait 20 years, I will have more bandwidth for the same amount of money. That's scaling.
Okay. But it's like a passive. Yeah. I mean, you just like
exactly.
Moore's law, whatever.
You just wait for the world to happen. Yep. And you don't scale as fast as Moore's law because you want to skim a little bit off and make extra profit as well. Because if you skim and you take off the top, yeah, there you go. So, I mean, I think that's probably a good summary of the difference between all these different aspects of how Bitcoin functions then. Questions?
Yeah, I always have this question in mind. I think you also mentioned this before because most people, I think in crypto, they think proof of stake, proof of work comes first, then people invented proof of stake. But you are saying before you solve the problem, consensus, you use something like a proof of stake before you came up with the correct solution. How does this process go?
Here's the thing. If you look at the carbon credit system run by the European Union, every single, they've changed it now, but every single country had its own database that acted as a node and updated a dematerialized token.
Okay, sounds like
The way that they controlled that was with a digital signature. So guess what? It's called proof of stake. The Eurobond system is a dematerialized digital asset. It's a bearer instrument. Cryptocurrency is not new. Cryptocurrency existed in the 1980s. Terrible, awful things. But none of this is new from cryptocurrency point of view. The difference is a non-cryptocurrency system, a system that isn't like those. So Eurobonds, which are a form of dematerialized or completely user-held digital asset, well, off you go. They're no different to a proof of stake based Ethereum system. Technically, the same. The carbon trading credit system, if you read Armstrong versus Winnington Network's British case, exactly no technical difference. In fact, some of the concepts on how I design Bitcoin derived from some of these early sort of Euro trading systems. So I just made it better. I added incentives.
Incentives.
So
Okay.
that's the distinction. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Another question. I think trying to understand why a lot of people, they somehow get confused. I think even when I first get into, let's say, blockchain, because usually people regard it as proof of stake. From an end user's point of view, it is kind of like a socialist. It's very appealing to people because when people join, right? So they say, oh, if you're like a proof of work, right? I cannot, I'm not like a miner. I don't have millions of dollars to invest. I cannot earn. I cannot participate, right? But versus the proof of stake, it's very emotionally appealing. You just stake some coin. No matter how poor you are.
How do you earn money?
You stake some in some wallet or exchange. You just earn some free money. That I'm just saying that's from a very many users' perspective.
So, like I said, remember, if Vitalik or someone controls 60% of the network, what do you earn?
I mean, it's tiny, but it's
still... You get paid for staking. Really?
Like
Is it? They don't need to give it to you ever. I mean, that's actually a myth. There's no need that, for you as a staker to ever see any money. That's the whole point of 50% control on this thing. Where does it go? Vitalik, 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 Ethereum Foundation, Vitalik, Vitalik, Vitalik. The end. I mean, you sit there going, oh, I get a say. No, you don't.
Okay. So yeah, that's just a lot of time is emotion, like a proof of even delegate proof. People can vote on something like a validator or whatever the latest they call. It's I don't know if it makes them feel okay, and it's kind of opinion because on the one hand, if you have if you are into Bitcoin, like an average user, you are not. It feels like you are not earning from the network, but if it's some other like a small change, you just whatever stake, you just some wallet or exchange, you put some money, you earn a little bit tiny, but it's still something better than whatever. Because if you are investing in Bitcoin, which most people they cannot, they can earn a little bit. So to them, is something versus nothing. So that I can understand the
but that's only because of the. Yeah, but that's only because of the fake sort of renting out interest stuff at the moment. All of that will stop anyway because it's technically illegal right now. Always has been. So.
Is that what do you think? Where
none of these people are earning because of proof of stake.
Okay, what is that? Where the DeFi farm yielding, whatever the interest is coming from? Where does the money come from? Is it like just a Ponzi?
DeFi is just it's just a Ponzi. I mean, it is purely Ponzi. It is we'll just make money out of Blah. Well,
Thin
really?
air. Yeah.
Doing what?
Yeah.
Dogfood.com.
Okay.
Been there, done that.
Mm.
Anyway, we're coming to that time
Okay.
again. So hopefully that gave you something more to think about in
Mhm.
how and why behind the design.
Okay. Yeah. That's seems a proof of stake. Yeah. I'm even curious whether the Ethereum will actually deploy because they've been talking about this for a long time. But I don't know if they
Um,
understand this not going to
I
work.
know. I mean,
So they have the code. They even have a test net, but somehow they always delay the switch. I don't know. Maybe they
I
understand this
don't think
already.
they can get
So
it working, is the truth.
okay.
Yep.
Okay. At least
Alrighty.
they understand. Okay.
I'll
Sounds
catch
good.
you next week then,
Next week.
and enjoy fatherhood.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Enjoy your
Alrighty.
the week. Okay. Thank you. See you next week.
Will do. Talk to you soon.
So talk to you.